The new M2 Max MacBook Pro sounds like it ticks all the boxes for a pro-level laptop. It's fast, has amazing hardware, excellent battery life, and it can be configured to desktop levels of performance of up to 96 gigabytes of memory. Never before has a MacBook been so powerful and so capable, and yet, I decided to return it. Not because it isn't a great laptop, no, that's not it, because I do like the new M2 Max MacBook Pro. The only problem is, I already have something better. Now for this video, it is all about helping you make the best purchasing decision possible. So I think what I'm about to say is going to be helpful for users thinking about possibly upgrading to these new M2 models, and to consider that, I think you need to focus on 4 key areas: design, battery life, performance, and real-world usage. I'm a real Mr. Who's the Boss now.
Suave, Terry Suave's the name, London, Scotland Yard, that sort of thing.
Now, design for these products is the same as what Apple previously shipped with the 14 and 16-inch M1 Pro and M1 Max MacBook Pro. So they still have the thicker, flatter design, more ports, the same keyboard, the same trackpad layout, and of course things like the new mini LED display with thinner bezels, and of course, the notch, front and center. Gotta love that notch. Now listen, I'm spoiled, and you have to understand that I'm coming from the perspective of someone who's already been using the M1 Max MacBook Pro for well over a year, so that means that this model to me is basically unchanged from the outside, and there's nothing new that excites me here. But my review of this body is still the same as last year for the new MacBook Pro designs, and that is that they are way better for more demanding users. So primarily, if you're still on an older Intel MacBook Pro, especially the ones from 2016 to 2020, you'll appreciate just how well designed not only this thing looks, but also how much more functional it is thanks to more ports and obviously a way better thermal design. Now, I partially lied when I said that this model was unchanged from my M1 Max model because I've been using the 14-inch M1 Max model for the past year, so I thought this would be the perfect chance to try and jump ship and see if the bigger 16-inch model would win me over. Obviously, the bigger screen size is really nice to work with, especially as someone that primarily uses their laptop to edit videos and retouch photos. Having that extra screen real estate was a noticeable jump up using the 16-inch model, and the display quality it's unreal. That paired together with the excellent sounding speakers, which provide even more bass and clarity over the 14-inch model, made this machine actually kind of hard to give up at first. So I'm not denying that there wasn't a honeymoon period, but ultimately, I realized that the 16-inch model wasn't conducive to the way in which I usually use my laptop. First of all, while the bigger screen size was nice for having even more space to grade and edit my videos, it's kind of rare that I edit videos without an even bigger external display connected to my MacBook. When I'm using my MacBook portably, it's usually to do other things like write scripts or do research, answer emails, and yes, I do occasionally edit video on the go, but it's just very rare at this point. So usually when I do edit videos, my MacBook is connected to a bigger external display. And since its release, that has primarily been a studio display where I keep one at my home and also one at my studio. With one simple Thunderbolt cable, this not only provides everything I need to drive this 5K display, but it also acts as a hub for my MacBook Pro by providing 96 watts of power to charge my laptop and also providing me with 3 additional USB-C ports on the back of the studio display to connect additional accessories. And like the 16-inch MacBook Pro, the studio display is equipped with some pretty impressive speakers. So I didn't really miss the 16-inch much in this regard either. And if I was using my MacBook Pro away from my desk, this speaker upgrade proved mostly unused, as I would never blast my laptop at full volume in public spaces like a coffee shop or in an airport. And in public spaces, I always use something like a pair of AirPods because I have anxiety and I don't want people listening to what I'm listening to, and also, it's just kind of rude to blast your music, you know? It's kind of rude to let everyone hear what you're listening to and interrupt people and you know, it's not all about you. Consider other people once in a while, okay? I also found that the size of the 16-inch model, while pleasant at first, felt more like a negative the more I used it. This bigger and thicker MacBook was really a presence in my bag and was not something I enjoyed lugging around with me because of its more hefty 4.8-pound weight compared to the 3.5 pounds on my 14-inch model. And ultimately, I missed just how much more compact my 14-inch model was in comparison. I felt like I was sacrificing too much portability, and it always had me questioning if I should take the 16-inch with me or leave it at home, which kind of defeated the purpose of it being a laptop in the first place. Even small things about the design of the 16-inch were a little hard to go back to after using my 14-inch model for so long. Things like the keyboard placement kind of bothered me, of how it was kind of like very centered in the laptop with like this thicker speaker grills around it. And I much more preferred how the layout was on my 14-inch model with the keyboard stretched more to the edge. But listen, for all the negative things I have said about the design of the bigger 16-inch model, one aspect out of all of them still had me thinking twice about keeping it. And that, my friends, was better battery life. Apple has done something amazing here. They actually made the 16-inch battery life even better than the last time. And that's because they increased the efficiency core count on the new M2 Pro and M2 Max chips. And because that 16-inch already had a big 100 watt-hour battery, that made the battery life on this just almost unkillable. And after using the 14-inch for so long, I forgot what it was like to have a battery that could withstand so much use. The 16-inch Pro easily lasted me maybe 12 to 16 hours of endless use during like a work session for like basic tasks, and I could even video edit in Final Cut Pro on this machine for longer than 6 hours of total use, which is just insane to me that you can actually use the full performance of this M2 Max chip and it still has battery life to spare. The battery life gains were only exacerbated by the fact that my aging 14-inch M1 Max model is down to about 90% of its initial battery health. Basically meaning that with every charge of my 14-inch model, the battery life got a little bit weaker the next time I used it. But I think 16-inch owners can rest assured that they are getting what may be the best battery life ever in a laptop, and also one with huge capacity, so that should age beautifully for years to come. Not once during my review period of the 16-inch model did I need to pack a power brick into my bag for a day trip. Still, the battery life can't withstand everything. One area where I was kind of disappointed with the battery life was with gaming. Now, during my gaming test using the 16-inch MacBook Pro, I found that when playing a mix of games, the battery life on this with all the GPU cores running full throttle was probably like a little bit over 3 hours of use. Now, that's not uncommon, right? Like gaming laptops running full throttle. I think like you can like drain like a gaming laptop battery in like under an hour sometimes. So maybe you can mark this as a positive for the MacBook Pro. All I'm trying to say is that even though this has a huge battery in it, and even though mostly these chips are very efficient, there's still tasks that if you go full throttle on them, like gaming, you can still expect some pretty weak battery life. Like, it's not magic. It's good. It's great. It's impressive, but it's still not magic. Speaking of not magic, performance. This is another area where on paper I had a hard time dismissing the power gains of the 16-inch model in particular. I don't know why I talked like that, but I did. Now, most of us in the know that even though you can spec out the 14 and 16-inch model for feature parity, we kind of know that the 14-inch model is still a bit behind in processing power, thanks to the additional cooling offered by the bigger 16-inch model. So sustained workloads are usually faster on the 16-inch model, and things like the 38 GPU cores on the 16-inch model are actually clocked higher than on the 14-inch model. And in benchmark tests and some real-world gaming tests, I found that this increase in GPU performance was pretty substantial on the new M2 Max chip, like around a 30% increase even over the 16-inch with an M1 Max chip. And with multi-core performance also seeing a pretty substantial increase over the M1 Max, you would think that there would be noticeable gains in performance for every task. And while every workflow is different, and some might be more reliant on raw CPU or GPU horsepower, the majority of my professional life does live inside Final Cut Pro, and that is a task that Apple has basically kicked off to their dedicated media engines on these chips. That meant I was seeing no noticeable increase in Final Cut Pro export times compared to my M1 Max model, and even timeline performance felt very similar moving from M1 Max to the M2 Max. This is one of the reasons why benchmarks really don't tell the whole story. Apple has custom made these chips that are optimized in multiple areas, and that includes areas like the media engines, where tasks that were traditionally handled by the CPU and GPU just aren't anymore. So it doesn't matter how much more theoretical power this M2 Max chip has, if I'm not personally seeing a significant time savings, or if my current system isn't causing headaches. Then, for me at least, I don't see a particular reason to upgrade. Now, just to reiterate, that's not to say you won't see gains in real-world performance for your own workflows. Everyone is different here. But for now, the M1 Max can still handle, and I'll be honest, I feel like my workloads are pretty basic, they can handle them just fine. Still, there was one area where I almost considered keeping this M2 Max model, and that was the real measurable gains in gaming performance. But again, my own testing led me to believe that this still wasn't enough of a reason to upgrade. Now, yes, and I feel like I have to clarify every statement in this review, but yes, you will see big gains in gaming performance, especially on optimized games that run natively on Apple Silicon, which there aren't many, but Resident Evil 8 Village, that's a game I really like, is optimized for macOS, and you'll kind of be blown away by how well this MacBook Pro can run this game, and also how efficiently it does it too. I was playing that game, and I don't even think I really heard the fans whirl up on it. But still, that's just one game out of many. And for the most part during my testing of the 16-inch MacBook Pro, yeah, this wasn't held back for a lack of power with gaming, but more of a lack of optimization, with most macOS games still running through Rosetta translation and being poorly optimized ports that significantly hampered their performance beyond what you would expect on similarly powered desktop PC versions of these games. I mentioned before how in Resident Evil 8 Village, I could barely hear the fans on my MacBook Pro. Yeah, when playing these unoptimized games, sometimes the fans sounded like a jet engine. I felt like I was back using an Intel MacBook Pro. Now, ultimately, it was areas like this where when reviewing this 16-inch model, where I was really trying to see if I had enough raw horsepower to brute force my way through areas that I considered weak points with my M1 Max, and at least in my testing, I didn't. So that's the situation. That's why I plan to stick with my 14-inch M1 Max MacBook Pro. I just prefer the size of the device, and it still does everything I needed to do after more than a year of owning it. And even with these new, more powerful models out in the market, I am not seeing a noticeable enough speed boost to warrant upgrading. And while you may walk away thinking that's a bad thing, I don't. I remember not too long ago that I would constantly chase upgrade after upgrade after upgrade, always wanting and needing more speed, more power, but a great product doesn't need to be replaced every year. And Apple really has made some stellar laptops with these Pro Apple Silicon Macs. So I, for one, am kind of grateful that I don't need to upgrade this year. So if you already own an M1 Pro or an M1 Max MacBook Pro, you're probably like me. You probably don't need to upgrade, and you probably won't need to upgrade for some time. But I know there's a lot of you that waited for the revisions of the new M2 MacBooks. There are more Mac users that skipped the initial generation waiting to see if there were any major flaws with Apple's switch from Intel to their own custom Apple Silicon. And if you're on an older Intel MacBook Pro and you're ready to make the jump to these new M2 Pro and M2 Max models, or you're a Windows user and this is like your first Mac ever, this is a great choice. And if I didn't already own an M1 Max machine, I would be purchasing this laptop, but maybe the 14-inch model. All right, everyone, I hoped this month perspective of using the new M2 Max MacBook Pro has helped you out with your own purchasing decision. If it did, you know what to do. Leave me a like. If you want to see more to the channel, if you want to see more from the channel, not to the channel, if you want to see more from this very well edited, very well crafted, very well spoken channel that never makes mistakes, get subscribed. And thanks for watching. You didn't have to watch this. You could have done something else with your time. You could have been, I don't know, watching football, playing a video game, going out to eat, spending time with your friends and family. You could have been doing all that, but instead you chose to spend, I don't know. I think I uploaded this on Saturday. If you're watching this on Saturday, you chose to spend your Saturday with Greg. And I appreciate that. If it's not Saturday though, you might have chosen another day, which is also fine. I've taken enough of your time. Have a nice day.